This is Critical Nonsense, our high-lowbrow show about culture, science, and tech. This week, Joey asks me about trusting our instincts.
Woo! Devotion. This is what a Joey sounds like. And this is what an executive producer and gut biome Jess Vander sounds like.
Hi, this is Jess.
You're a whole ass biome.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds a little insulting, but maybe it's actually fine.
It is not insulting. Jess.
Okay.
I've been thinking about instincts recently for actually in a couple different ways. And I think talking ahead of starting the show has brought some of that to the forefront. And so, conversations about cognitive styles and how to engage with things and sort of background processing has been on my mind. I've taken over leadership of an additional company called Upstatement. And in that process, right, it's interesting thinking about how with Sylvain, it's this place that I've been at since it started and grown with and know everyone and know the patterns and know all of these things. But coming into Upstatement as a CEO is interesting, where there is a shape, there is a pattern, there is all of these things that are already happening. And so you're trying to understand all of those things and figure out ways in which you can help and make things easier or better or function more effectively as part of the role. And a lot of that experience has been recognizing like, oh, this is an area where I think something can be improved or made easier, but not quite knowing why when you first set out into it and having to be like, why am I feeling this is an area that like we could fix something? And people are like, yeah, I think we could fix something there, but I don't know what. So you're going through this thing of like, everyone has this sense something could be better there, but you have to figure it out. And so this idea of like, where am I recognizing the pattern from? Why is there some sort of like background processing instinct that is like pointing in this direction? And I think we do this in a lot of parts of our lives, right? Like if you're a more empathetic person than average, right? You're sort of recognizing some pattern in someone's nonverbal behavior or the way that they're communicating with you, that there's something underneath the surface that maybe isn't being explicitly spoken about yet. And so you have some instinct that there's something there. You don't know what it is. And so my question for you is, how do you engage with your instincts?
Wow, I like this a lot. As somebody maybe who identifies as like a very much instinct truster type person, like I don't know how else to say it.
You're pro instinct.
I'm pro instinct, because what it is right about is not always clear, but it is almost certainly sort of unspoilt. Like instincts are instincts for a reason, and it's just interesting to know what one is attuned to. Like, what is your instinct radio station? And I don't know how like I don't know if there's what is the name of this other than I guess just like cognitive strengths. Like, what kind of thinking are people good at? Like, I feel like I've talked about how
cognitive style,
right? Like pattern recognition for me is like the pattern recognition and critical thinking, which is basically like find the same things and then find the flaws, or like find the different things. Like, give me those puzzles all day. Like that. That's basically what my job is, or maybe why I'm all right at it. Definitely is not mostly what my job is, but I feel like those are the things that I am most drawn to, and half of it is like if I see something, even if I can't put words to it or pictures to it quite yet, like usually my instinct is there first of like, like I can see, like sometimes I can maybe picture the vague outlines of something in my head right away, and I just need to like usually I'm itching to draw it out or put something down or write out a thing because it's like, oh, light bulb.
Light bulb. My yeah, pattern recognition definitely is like a thing that I get excited about, and also like a thing I can't turn off, where sometimes you're recognizing a pattern where you're like, I don't want to know more here, like, or like it's a thing where, yeah, sometimes you recognize things that people aren't trying to tell you, and you're like happy to give them their privacy, but then you're like, oh no, I like figured it. Like my wife always jokes like I always know people are pregnant before they tell us, and I can't tell you why. I don't know how, like what I'm picking up on in interacting with them. And she's like, why do you always know before a friend tells us that? And I'm like, I don't know. I literally have no idea. I can't tell you why. But there are other things, where you're sort of seeing something that someone clearly doesn't want to talk about, and I'm happy to give them space, and still like some pattern recognition thing is happening in the background where you're like, shit, I know this thing, like, and you just keep it to yourself. But then as an external processor,
don't be storking. As we all know.
Yeah, don't be storking.
Storking, the phenomenon of outing someone who is pregnant who is not discussing that.
But there's like something in that intuition too about like, I think this person would like to receive this information in a different way than that person, or like what is motivating these people. And like you can obviously, those things are so reductive. If I'm like, this person's motivated by X, obviously everyone contains multitudes, and you're sort of attempting to distill your own intuition in the context of a particular context or like a particular situation. And also it is valuable, but feels like in some ways it's precognitive, right? Like it's not a thing that you can articulate. And, there's different emerging science around the fact that like your heart is literally neuron dense and your gut is extremely neuron dense, and maybe there's like processing that is actually happening in those places and signal is feeding up, or maybe it's happening in like midbrain somewhere where it's like really old patterns that your body is good at, like identifying social cues or something like that. I don't know what it is, but it often just feels precognitive when you're like, I know something. Why do I know this thing?
Is this why we call it a gut instinct?
That fits like in that sort of like old wisdom sometimes is true for the wrong reasons thing. Like I've wondered a lot about this specific question of like follow your heart or trust your gut, right?
Yeah, I feel, because that is I literally, as soon as you were talking about instincts, like the first thing I said was like, I feel them. Like it's like a heart racing, like maybe there's like the beginning of a thing that I am aware of, but yeah, what did you say? Precognitive?
Precognitive, yeah.
Yeah, it's like that idea of like, or it's like on my face, and then someone's like, Jess, what do you think? And I'm like, oh, great question. You're right. I am thinking something. What am I thinking?
Yeah, I mean, like there are some studies that are coming out about like, specific dendritic clusters that exist in your gut, and that there may be like vagus nerve microbial like interaction, and that there may actually be mechanical signals. Like it's not going, the science is not at a point where it's like determined that you're actually doing processing in a meaningful way, but it's sort of like pointing in a direction that had been like gut intelligence was historically, like folk wisdom, trust your gut, follow your heart, like those places were before we even knew about like cells. We were using phrases like that. And then we, got to the point where we knew about cells and we're like, definitively, like that's not where anything's happening. And now it's sort of like cycling back. And so it is interesting. I think in many cases when we say, follow your heart or trust your gut, there's maybe different interpretation. Follow your heart means like listen to your emotions, right? As opposed to being hyper logical, and trust your gut, I think is maybe saying like you have intuitions that are precognitive that are probably already telling you an answer that you're trying to cognitively work to, but maybe you already know what the answer is without having that sort of like explicit clarity. So independent of whether that processing is happening in those two other like bodily organs or clusters of neurons, I think it's speaking to the fact that like you're processing things in many ways, and don't forget to at least check in with those other ways of processing, as opposed to trying to be like hyper rational, hyper logical, hyper linear in the way that you solve problems in your life, maybe.
Yeah, well, and it also it sort of like implies a conversation that you're having with yourself and agency you have over even what, like, choosing what to think of, like, you have a thought, but some other part of you is telling you a different thought, and then you're like, no, and you override that. Like, it's like your little angel devil on your shoulders, like talking to you, or your stomach and your heart and your head talking to you. Like, however you want to visualize, like all of the different sort of ways that one thinks. Like this also probably ties to, just like all of the other neurodivergent stuff that we've talked about, of just like how even that interaction works probably changes significantly from person to person. Like how much overriding you are aware that you're doing, versus just, I'm just like, I think through everything logically.
Yeah. The way that you frame that makes me think about, it's a hypothesis. It's been explored, and I think, continues to have research, but there was Julian Jaynes had written a book called, I think we've spoken about on here at some point too, of like, I think it's called like I'll just pull it up actually, instead of The Origin of Consciousness in the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. And the idea of it was that at some point, there was an integration between your left and right hemisphere, is where like the theory comes from. Whereas historically, the idea, I believe, is that like when you heard your internal monologue, the sort of voice from your right hemisphere, I think is where the theory sits, you thought it was the voice of God, as opposed to like an integrated understanding of oneself and sort of internal processing. And that was sort of the emergence of consciousness at sort of specific like historic moments. And that sort of led to the Great Leap Forward. I'm probably butchering aspects to the thesis, but I think it also makes me think about like the Kevin Kelly idea of different AIs designed to operate in different ways, and one might be really fast and one might be really slow, and one is really specific and one is really general, and how do you interact with them? That like, or
like the Edouard de Bono thinking hats.
Yeah, that you can engage. Our brains evolved in such a messy capacity where you add a new feature or function because it was like evolutionarily beneficial, but it wasn't like perfectly cleanly designed. Like a lot of times you're sort of just like latching on a new capability. It's much more like what is it, the ship of Theseus, right, where you're like latching on some new thing. You're like, now we can process vision better, and let's add a new color. Like, we're better able to like regulate fear response, or now you can process math. We've expanded memory, but it's just these like constantly latching things on, and so you have access to these different processing capabilities. Tapping into them like intentionally is interesting.
To just catch anyone who's like, what is the Ship of Theseus up to speed? I find this so interesting. The question is, it's also known as Theseus's paradox. The question is, is a given thing the same thing if all the original parts of it were replaced over time with a new part? So like, is Theseus's ship still the same if the sails replaced and the hull is replaced and all these other things? And then it's like, wait, is that the same ship? This is where this comes from.
Yeah, and the idea is like,
to the story.
Even if you were replacing every board on the ship, but only one at a time, and it was happening over 50 years, right? Is it the same ship? And in some ways, our bodies are like that. We would say that we are contiguously the same, but in theory, because our cells are replacing themselves at different intervals, we are, at least in a materialist sense, not the same person we were 7 to 10 years ago, right? In like a holistic sense, Right,
which also, sorry, another tremendous digression, but how this relates to even like, say, a company culture where you can imagine if you are, some people are leaving and new people are joining, but it is happening at a slow and steady rate where it's only a few people at a time cycling in and out. You can imagine, okay, well, at least there's enough carryover where the culture might remain the same over time, or at least like change less dramatically than if the entire company is fired and then a whole new set of employees comes in. It's like, well, there's no reason for any carryover to be happening at all, or even just like spending some time together. Like from a peopling perspective, that makes sense. Versus like, do you create any amount of continuity of wooden boards on a ship if they just had some time to be on the ship together? Like,
right.
Is the physical presence, the oral history enough to like carry over the legacy or originality of a thing?
And we do this in a lot of ways around entities. We think of ourselves as the same person, right? And even if things are replacing and changing out because it's happening over time, some patterns are maintained. But we also acknowledge the people's tastes, preferences, behaviors, orientations to things evolve over time. We can see it in people around us, even if it's harder to see in ourselves because we're steering the ship of Theseus, so to speak. But like a company is a great example. We think of that company, especially if it's old, storied, or at least recognized in a fashion where you begin to develop some sort of construct in your head about it. You think about it contiguous. I think about Sylvain in a very like contiguous way, even though so much has changed. I have some level of expectation of like, if I do a thing, Sylvain as an entity will respond in some sort of predictable fashion. And so I think of it as contiguous, and it is very much not, right?
Right. It's like what is this? The idea of a thing, and how is that preserved? Like, what even preserves something like that? I don't even know.
But it fits in some ways within this question of like intuition and almost information processing, maybe similarly, right? Of like, you as an individual have so many systems and so many tools at your disposal to process any given bit of context, any moment in time, any set of stimuli. And I think what the intuition conversation is maybe suggesting is like someone who's in touch with their intuition. Maybe all we mean is that they're willing to accept signal from a wider range of processing structures that they have, right? Everyone won't. Maybe there are sort of physical ways in which everyone doesn't have the same types or same degrees of intuition in all the same places. But I think someone who trusts their gut is maybe signaling they're willing to listen to sort of background signal processing, let's call it, right? Things that are happening precognitively or in ways that you're not necessarily conscious of. And for me, actually, that is like a helpful framing to be like, are you touching all the places that your mind, body, whatever are processing a situation, or are you only saying like, I will only process logically. They said this, I will do that. This situation looked like this, so I will respond in that way.
Right, exactly. Like, are you taking, how much are you, even if you can't explain it, carrying over a pattern that you're seeing or deducing something from a thing that, and then it's like, I expect this is what's going to happen next, or that you're finding some kind of weak point or point of difference, or even just like connecting various dots, like something out of left field. I can't explain this, but like this reminds me of this other thing. And you're right. There is something about just like that openness to maybe not being able to put all of those things together immediately, but having the idea that maybe that is relevant and worth listening to.
I'll give like one example and maybe we wrap up, but I was looking at two things recently that were like a similar problem, but in different parts of the company. And the first one I went through, I had an intuition. So then I'm getting some gut-based signal, for lack of, let's put gut in quotes, based signal, and dug into the data and was like, gut was confirmed. This is right. We should make this adjustment. There was sort of a similar shaped problem somewhere else. And then I'm like, oh, I just had that signal, gut-based solution. This was right. Let me dig in and check this out. And was actually like wrong in the second place. But in both cases, it was like using both gut and maybe like the more logical thing and contending with both, but not over relying on either. And so that balancing act is probably helpful, but maybe that brings us to Jess's gut corner.
Cool. Yeah, not that the gut knows all. Maybe the gut knows some. And how much we choose to listen to it, or that we even have the option to, maybe is sort of the cool part of it all. That we can both know a thing and not know a thing at the same time, somehow, is cool. And maybe we all have different times that our guts light up and yell at us about something. I'm curious if anybody listening has any thoughts. You should write to us at criticalnonsense@sylvain.co and tell us what your guts are saying.
Haggis.
Well, that's a little bit on the nose, isn't it?
It's on the belly button. Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain production.
Brought to you by that pink stuff. Pink stuff. Something that looks like the stomach should probably go into it.
As always, we'd like to thank our executive producer and navel gazer, Jess Vander.
I don't like that. We'd also like to thank sound engineer and logic and reason, Alex Contel.
We'd like to thank our programming coordinator and Billy Rubin, Les Jacobs.
Thanks to our production crew and the processing structures of our lives. Sarah Gilbert, Nora Mestrich, Christy Jensen, Amanda Medina, and Amy Water.
And as always, thanks, Ellen.
Thank you.
Special thanks to Billy Rubin, Billy Verdon, all the Billies, all the Billy Aries. Billy
Goat.
Joel, Billy Eichner.
Eilish? Many.
There's so many Billies.
Many options here. It's true.
Thanks, Billies.
Silly?
Thanks to other bodily part names that are funny. Jejunum. It's just a funny word.
And also judgmental.
It's judgmental. You're like,
yeah, to be jejune is to be like, kind of naive.
Is it?
So, yeah. And like
Well,
boring.
It's just like
What's the jejunum?
It's a portion of your small intestines.
Oh. Is this related to bird brain and all of the ways that we insult birds with words? Talk to me another time about the way we insult birds with words.
That feels like bird word related. They're generally, they're not like hawkish or dovish.
Yeah,
like
we are slandering birds. Wait,
both hawks and doves contain multitudes.
left and right. Yeah, and birds are smarter than we give them credit, as we know from my whole diatribe about that. Well, anyway, special thanks to birds. Those guys, they're out there.
They're not real.
Oh my god.
Birds aren't
Grown.
real. I saw recently bumper stickers that were saying horses aren't real. I was like, now we're extending it to horses?
No. Boy, oh boy.
Birds nor horses. Well, we did it. Love you, mean it. Bye.
That was nice. Bye.